was 12 years old, I came in a field trip to Costa Rica.
To Costa Rica.
I said, when I grow up, I want to live here. It was just the atmosphere and again, the people. Coming from England, there was enough similarities. There was big difference between social classes, which there was in Nicaragua. I mean, there was very, very defined, and I didn't like that. I wanted to live around people that felt equal. Very early in my life, I realized that having ideas was fantastic, but it was even more fantastic to carry them out. So I decided to make a movie with this video camera, and I would do the editing from the VHS to the camera. In the 1999, I did an hour film, and I presented it to the Costa Rican Film Festival. Didn't make anything, but one of the judges saw it, and we met, and he says, how much did you spend doing this movie? And I said, $20. And he says, do you have any other ideas? And I said, yes. And he gave me $30,000 to make that first film. Any effort you make will never go to waste. Any effort you make, it will take you somewhere.
The Richard Fortin Presents podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've made it to Richard Fortin Presents Costa Rica version. Thanks for joining us today. I am with an artist of many arts. I'm going to call him Selba, but the full name is...
Gerardo Selva-Godoy.
Thank you for doing this. Appreciate you being here in your
Thank you for
pottery.
inviting me.
I discovered your pottery studio through friends who brought me here to have a day of creative making things. I had never done this and I loved it.
Well, I never thought that in my life I would do a podcast. It's my first one ever.
Well,
So it is exciting.
let's introduce you to the Canadian audience
Oh, fantastic.
that I'm
Yes, sure.
building.
I love Canada. It's a beautiful place.
It is. I love
Very
Canada.
similar to Costa Rica in many ways.
Yes, right now at this
The
time of
warmth
year,
of the people,
the kindness.
the kindness.
One of the things I noticed right away when I started coming here was that people look you in the eye
Yes.
and say good morning
Uh-huh.
and say hello. And there's still a naturalness in the interaction, not a
A
coldness.
human warmth.
A human warmth. So it's a pleasure for me to be here on this hot, it's always hot here, which I love because it's cold back home.
Uh-huh.
But I would like to talk about your journey as an artist.
Okay.
I would like to know, now I know you, of course, because I've walked through your studio, which is behind us, which we'll show people in the B-roll. But tell me about your journey as a creative, as an artist, because I mean, I'm looking forward to discovering what that is.
Well, from my father's side, he had brothers and sisters that were sculptors, that were poets and writers, and within my own family, it was 6 of us, and I was born 12 years after my sister, and so the youngest. And my mother was a very powerful woman, and she decided that she was going to tell each one of my brothers what they were going to be, and she would sit them as children at the table, and she would say, you're going to be an engineer, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be this and that. And he failed them all. None of them followed, and they were all one of my brothers that studied architecture, he left it on the last year of architecture. The other one was studying law, and he left it at the end of the year. So when my time came, she never told me what to become. But I had, unconsciously, I had the idea that you had to be an engineer and an architect and a doctor in order to be. And then so I went into economics because I was good in math. And of course, after a year and a half in economics in Mexico, a friend of mine saw that I was doing posters and I was recycling materials to make furniture, and I was very creative, and he was studying architecture, and he said, there is a new career called industrial design, and I think you should be good at that. So I called my parents and I said, I think I'm wasting my time, you're wasting your money. I want to do industrial design. Luckily, the word industrial in it meant that it was a serious career. So my sister was living in England at that moment, so I asked her, are there any art schools that do industrial design in England? And there was one in every block, in England. So I moved to England and I went into an art school in
Is that London?
Yeah, in 1972
Wow.
in Bournemouth and Poole Art and Design College. I arrived there. I never had done art in my life. I had an interview with the head of the department, and he says, "What, you want to do art?" And I said, "Yes." "Have you ever done art before?" I said, "No." "And how do you know you want to do art?" And I said, "Because I know." So he said, "Okay, you don't have a portfolio. I don't have a portfolio." So he says, "Well, go back and do a portfolio." So I went and bought sketchbooks, and I bought watercolors, and I bought color pencils, and I began to do stuff where I was staying. And 3 weeks later, I came back and I said, "Here it is." So he says, "Okay, we're gonna do a test here, so we know that you did these things." So they put me to draw, and they said, "Go and do this," and in a morning interview. So I came back, and he says, "Okay, we're gonna do something. We're gonna take you in," and that was September. By December, we're gonna see how you do. If you're not doing right. Oh well, and he said, "What happens if you don't come in? If you don't accept you?" And I said, "Well, I'll just have to go back to Nicaragua." So he said, "Okay, we're gonna take you to December, and in December we decide if you stay or not." And of course, it was like throwing a fish into the water. I loved it, and by December I was rolling. So I did all sorts of things, and I did a lot of graphic design, did jewelry, did drawing, did photography, all sorts of things. By the end of that year, you were supposed to choose your specialty. So they say you should go for graphic design. And I said, "No, I don't want a graphic design." And of course, my portfolio was very graphic because that's what they pushed you into. And the program was just gave you all raw graphic stuff. So I went and did an interview in what was this, the city? Well, I can't remember the city. And they
In England? In
In
England
England,
still?
yeah.
Yeah.
I applied for 3D design,
Okay.
and they rejected me.
Okay.
So I went to Ravensbourne College near London, and they said, "We like to take people that have been rejected." And I said, "Because," I said, "Do you know what you want to do?" And I said, "No, I'm not really sure yet." So he said, "Okay, we'll take you, and we do a 1 month where in a week you do metals, you do wood, you do pottery, and you do plastics."
Yeah.
So I did each one of the projects, and I went into the pottery room, and it was like love at first sight. I had never done it in my life. That's why I believe in previous lives.
Yeah.
I must have been in a previous life.
Yeah.
This is it. This is my home. This is what I want to do.
You felt at home.
Yes.
Right away.
So I began to do pottery then. It was 1973, September. That's why in 2023, it was 50 years ago.
50 years of being in this art form,
Yes.
working in this. How old were you at that time?
I was 24, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're 24
No, I
years
was
old.
20.
You're 20.
Yeah.
So then what happens?
Then I was there. I did my pottery program and came back to Costa Rica. I didn't want to be in Nicaragua, even though my parents, my family, and I was Nicaraguan. So, when I was 12 years old, I came in a field trip to Costa Rica.
To Costa Rica.
And then I said, when I grow up, I want to live here.
What did you love about it here at that time at 12 years old?
It was just the atmosphere, and
Yeah.
again the people,
Yeah.
you know, and being so close to my home, Nicaragua. I felt, coming from England, there was enough similarities. I mean, we Latin, we eat tortillas, we eat gallo pinto, and we dance salsa and merengue, and so there's a lot of similarities, and then the differences are very important. There was no big difference between social classes,
Yes.
which there was in Nicaragua.
Okay.
I mean, it was very, very defined
Yeah.
who was a blue blood and who was red blood or whatever. And I didn't like that. I wanted to live around people that felt similar, equal, that your last name and your upbringing didn't mean anything. And it hasn't here. So from the first time I arrived here, I've been treated like any one more person. I've represented Costa Rica like a Costa Rican. Well, I became Costa Rican 2 years later.
Okay.
I mean, I took the nationality. And
So
I
that's
came
from
to Pérez
the-
Celedón, where
Yeah.
we are right now.
Okay.
And I loved it, and I have been ever since.
That's amazing. And so you're in your mid-20s. You establish yourself here. How do you make a living from pottery and a play? Was this
I
something
didn't.
common?
I didn't.
Oh, okay. Tell me.
Well, first I got a job as a pottery instructor,
Okay.
because the first lady of Costa Rica that I just had come out of ¿cómo se llama?
School?
No, office.
Yeah.
She had an organization called the Association for the Development of Crafts, and she had here in San Isidro a pottery studio. So she sent me here, and for the first 3 years, I had a salary. I had
Yeah.
a salary, and,
And
then
that kept
after
you
that,
going.
after 3 years, I had enough of it. So I became a teacher at the University of Costa Rica, and then I mixed. Half time I would teach art in a high school, and the other part I would work in my shop, and I would pile up the work. And when Mother's Day would come and when Christmas would come, I would sell, and I would make my money from the pottery there. It was difficult, but the teaching, most of my life I
It
done
sustained you.
part-time teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it in your artwork? Like I did a bit of research on you before this interview. I was fascinated because, of course, we can get into the films that you've made, and we'll get into that. But you are doing all sorts of mediums. You're working in not just pottery, from my understanding, and I know that at the museum here in this city, they know you very well, and in your showroom there's some amazing. Are those ceramics?
Yes.
That's different.
And glass.
And ceramics and glass, and I love it. We're going to show some of that. What is it that makes what makes you curious? What makes you make
Well,
these
you are
things?
born curious.
You think you're born curious?
Yeah.
Okay, what doesn't kill the curiosity?
Well-
What's the difference between somebody who in their 20s
Well,
starts
very
something?
very early in my life and in this journey in arts, I realized very clearly that having ideas was fantastic, but it was even more fantastic to carry them out.
The execution of the
Yes.
idea, to do it.
So I began to get ideas, and I would go and do them. And on top of that, I had the what's the word?
Audacity, courage, talent, vision,
No. The
foresight.
The foresight to see if a project is feasible or not, because you can easily get involved in a project because it's a great idea, and at the other end it's not going to come out because it isn't impossible. So I would have ideas and see at the end the possibility of it being to end up in a. So I went to I got a Fulbright grant from the American Embassy. Went to Rochester, New York, and I decided that I want to do glass. And when in the interview, I said I want to do glass. Why? Because there's a lot of glass around, and I can use it, recycle it. So I went to the School of American Craftsmen in RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology, and I majored in glass, and I did glass fusing and glass blowing. It was fantastic. So after that, right at the end, before the course is ending, they sent me a letter saying that I could present a project to farewell project. So I said I want to rent a video camera, VHS in those days, a video camera to record glass blowing techniques and blah blah blah, and take them back to my country to show people.
Yeah.
So they gave me the money. They gave me $1,200. I didn't rent the camera, but I bought one with the money. So I did my, and when I had the camera in front of me, the whole work came out, And I said, this is fantastic. So I am on the airplane back to Costa Rica, and I go, I'm going to make a movie with this camera.
were you interested in film? Do you like film? Do you go watch films?
I grew up watching films.
Yeah.
I went to boarding school and we had movies 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Wednesdays, and Saturdays. We had movies, and we would see really good Catholic school, you know, with the Christian brothers that were very highly educated and had very good high education. So I was watching movies. We had a movie theater in the school. So I spent my 5 years in high school watching movies, good movies, not just any movie. And then before that, I had a movie theater across the road from my house in Nicaragua.
Yeah.
So I would go in there to watch movies. So I was really, without knowing, I was being fed images. And of course, I am also a very visual person. So I decided to make a movie with this video camera. And I made a couple of Herman Hesse stories, short stories, into a movie. The first one I did, I asked a friend, and we would have a tripod, and we would put the tripod in and record each other, and then he would record me and I would record him, and I would do the editing from the VHS to the camera, and I would spend hours editing this.
Not like today.
No, we're talking 1992.
Yeah.
So of course these movies were not only experimental, they were very bad.
Yeah.
You know, the most difficult thing in a movie is the pace, the timing, and you don't learn that in any book. You just gotta experience it.
Do it.
It's a bit like music. So I did movies from 1992 to the year 2000 when the digital cameras came out.
Yeah.
And I did my first feature.
Cool.
And in 1999,
Yeah.
I did a short, an hour film with the 5th grader kids in the school.
Yeah.
About a 10-year-old kid that wants to do a rock band.
Okay.
And I presented it to the Costa Rican Film Festival. Didn't make anything, but one of the judges saw it, and we met. And he says, "How much did you spend doing this movie?" And I said, $20. and he says, "Do you have any other ideas?" And I said, "Yes, I had under my arm a script that I had been writing for 8 years."
Wow.
Since 1992.
Yeah.
And he gave me $30,000 to make that first film.
Which probably felt like.
Of course, and the film came up and it's on YouTube.
Yeah.
And it worked, but you can see the amateur in it.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning. The film went without failure or glory.
Yeah.
And but then I realized that which is one of my mottos, any effort you make will never go to waste. Any effort you make, it will take you somewhere. And the more efforts you make, they pile up and they get there eventually.
Yes.
So from 1992 to year 2000, I made about 2 films a year with a VHS camera. And I learned to write. I learned about, shots, and I learned about editing. And in the newspaper, it said that in 5 years, this and this was going to happen. And I thought, I'm going to be ready for that. So I was learning through my own, experience with the VHS camera.
Wow.
So on the year 2000, that film, Chirripó, came out. And it was shown in the festival. Of course, it didn't go anywhere either. No glory or fail. And then those days, I had a love and hate relationship with filmmaking. Oh, and then I took a course in the Spanish Cultural Center about directing with a very famous Spanish director. And he said, when you're going to be a movie director, you need to know about everything. And of course, I thought, well, I'm not going to learn about accounting. But he meant about painting, music, photography, drama writing, a whole bunch of things you need to know. So I went into a music school and began to learn how to play drums.
Really?
After 3 months of classes, I was playing in front of 200 people, singing and playing the drums.
Yeah.
My father-in-law in those days, he comes in and he says, "Gerardo, I didn't know you played the drums." And I said, "I didn't know either."
I heard you were in a band too.
So In 2003, I got divorced because of all these things. Because I was into writing and into making movies and probably didn't pay enough attention to my wife. So, the year 2003, I began to write. In those days, I had a love and hate relationship.
Yeah.
Because it was difficult and it wasn't getting anywhere. And then I didn't know why I was writing this film that I was writing. The one it took me 8 years to write. And after the 8th year, I took a course on drama writing, and it suddenly all the questions and all my doubts fell into place. And I began to write better the more it went. And then I began to make more films with the kids in the school, which I still do. And I learned to direct, and I learned all these things. And in 2015, I think I hit my graduation filmmaking. In the middle of that, I recorded 4 CDs with my own songs and learned to play the guitar a little bit. Always
Creating.
So the 4 CDs with 40 songs are still there.
Wow.
And the 2015, one of the kids that I had made the movie when he was in 5th grade, he was already out of high school, and he's very talented. And he says to me, Gerardo, I'm not doing anything right now. Let's do something. I remember exactly the day and the moment he said that. So I came home, and I began to develop an idea about kids at university, because he was already 19. So I wrote Semana U, which means a week at the university or something like that, about a cultural week at the university, and I wrote a script. I wrote the idea in about a couple of months, and I said, I got something I'm working on. So I did the story, a little bit like I told you earlier on another story. And I went to Vermont to do a Zen retreat. And when I came back, wrote the script. And that script became my first real, serious, all-around movie. A good script, good direction of actors. Everything fell into place. Only, of course, it wasn't the high technology that you need in order to participate in festivals and all that.
Yeah.
The sound wasn't Dolby and this, and it was in absolutely high quality, because it was what do you call high definition.
Yeah.
But it was the high definition of the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then in 2015 also I did it with high definition camera. I did the camera, I did the script, I did the editing, put some of the music, and did a role in it, acted in it. So that film, they didn't accept it in the Costa Rican Film Festival, because they didn't even tell me why. They just didn't go in. At this moment, a movie that is 1 hour and 50 minutes in one location, because I did it in a house, with 14 characters. The movie starts with 2 characters in it, and it begins to add up. And by the end of the movie, there's 14 people, including the police, in the house. It's funny. It's a comedy. And it's what is called ensemble comedy.
Yes.
With its 6 characters that each one of them has a story, and they're all intermixed in the house.
Yeah.
And right now, it's got about 17,000 views.
Wow.
Which is more than any
cool.
other Costa Rican movie has ever had, So that's the story of my first important feature film.
Yeah.
And then after Chirripó, which was in the year 2000. After that, I've been working more with the kids, which I've done like about a short film every year. And let me think if there's anything else about Semana U, which is, there isn't really. But I kept writing, and I have 6 scripts for feature films in my computer. If I have an idea, I go for it and I write it.
And you're still passionate about it. You still want to make films?
Of course, I love it now, because right now, I know what I'm doing,
Yeah.
and I don't suffer
Yeah.
because I am relaxed in the
Interesting.
in the plateau.
Well,
You know.
and you mentioned Hermann Hesse, who of course wrote Siddhartha,
Of
one of the
course.
most influential books in my life.
Yes.
That came at a time in my life when I
With
really
that book, I
needed.
went into Buddhism too.
So Siddhartha, me
Yeah.
too. Siddhartha got me into
Yeah.
Buddhism, and I
Yeah.
always say Bob Marley and Buddha saved my life. I mean that. And so I noticed your necklace. You have a Buddha here,
Yeah.
and I know that you were recently in India
Yeah.
visiting.
Yeah.
Can
Buddhist
you,
sites.
can you tell me a little bit about Buddhism and how that's weaved its way through
Well,
your...
in 2022, I got divorced after 20 years of marriage. I have 3 daughters. I had to leave the house and leave them behind, which was the hardest thing in my life. I came here to where I live now, and I literally was thinking about suicide. And then I had heard and I had read about Zen Buddhism when I was in my 20s. And then I decided that if I ever had a spiritual practice, that would be it. And that was the moment when I felt that was the moment to try it out. And Zen Buddhism took me out of the crisis and resolved all the divorce problems in 3 months. Just by sitting and following my breaths. So after I had finally breathing clean air out of the pit of shit that I was into, I thought this is worth it. It has saved my life. It had resolved the problems that got me out of suffering,
Yeah.
which is what the Buddha did,
Yeah,
and which is what he left
yeah.
to help people come out of suffering.
How is India?
India, basically, I can tell you one thing about it. It is that he brought Buddha and all the bodhisattvas of his time to the ground, to the earth where I was stepping on.
Yeah.
And I realized, which we should do, that these people were human beings like us, that through a certain practice, they overcame and then they came out of suffering as normal people. And I am a normal person, so I could do it too.
Yeah.
It made me see that human beings can be happy and at peace, which is what he found,
Yes.
and I could also do it.
Through deep suffering on the brink of suicide as well, too, right? In his
Yeah,
story. Well,
that was
Siddhartha,
already
yeah. I mean,
over. That was
yeah,
already
of course.
resolved. But usually you see reading books,
But I'm
and
saying the human conundrum, the human story is universal, even though we all
Well-
go through it in different ways and we all have our unique life that brings us...
ever since I was a child, I could not accept what society and the world was telling me that life was as life. I mean, 5, 6, 7 years old, I was thinking, this can't be it. I mean, it is not possible that life is to have a job and to get a car and travel, and
Yeah.
that's too simple and too it cannot be. So I had that and I had that, and then suddenly and I couldn't see real happiness. I mean, happiness in a normal sense, you know, if you see a sunset and it is beautiful, it's fleeting.
Yeah.
Half hour later it is gone. And to me, happiness and well-being should be stable like a rock. It cannot be moved. It has to be in a state of being that is permanent and stable. Anything else that just moves and is transcends, it can't be it. So that's pretty much what took me there, and
That's
I
beautiful.
can say now that it does work.
And you practice. You have a
Of course,
practice.
you need
sit. I mean,
practice.
I've seen.
I mean, it's
I know this because I've
It's
seen
not
your
just
room.
an idea or an
Yeah, yeah.
intellectual
You
faith.
can't watch a movie about it.
No, it has to be
Experiential.
something that you realize and experience, and then keep it going through everyday life. It's not.
Are there parallels with the practice of making artifacts, of making art?
Well, in Buddhism there is emptiness in form. Reality is emptiness in form. There is a sutra called the Diamond Sutra that talks about emptiness in form. When we are born and our parents bring us up, they bring us up only in the world of form. Huh? The money, the food, the career, that is part of the form. Your body, your blood. Huh? And we never experience emptiness, which is another side of reality that is as valuable as the form. So through practice, you come to experience emptiness. And once you experience emptiness, you know there's another side of reality that you have to live. Pottery, filmmaking, singing, playing the guitar, you don't reject that because it's part of the form, it's part of reality. But you do them with an empty attitude.
Or a non-attachment.
On a non-attachment. Once you see the emptiness on the mug, then you don't get attached to it.
And you can make, and then you can get making too, and creating, and not being so
movie, once you see the song, you do it, you enjoy it, but if you see it, the emptiness in it, then you don't get attached. When it's over, and you start something new.
Yeah.
So learning to live with the two sides of the coin, of form and emptiness, is the trick. So you don't reject and you don't attach. Nothing is rejectable. I mean, anything is. And then you learn respect. Because if you see a person that is attached to another person, when they're in love and they suffer because of that love, you respect that because you say, well, that person should eventually understand if they try. If not, you're not going to make them change.
Yeah.
Because the change has to be worked on. It has to. You really have to sweat your behind in order to overcome the idea that only form exists.
Beautiful.
Okay?
That's beautiful. Now, you've taught a lot. You've been teaching. You've been a teacher for a good part of your life. You work with children. I watched your films before our interview. I was blown away by the quality and the whole concept, even though they were in Spanish and I needed an interpreter to help me understand what was happening. Do you see a change in people since the 70s to now when you teach? Do you see people sometimes and think, oh, that's a reminder? Or do you see an evolution? Do you see progress? Do you see downfall? Where as a teacher and as an observer?
What I've seen, the society has changed a lot. The school has changed a lot. It's grown. Before it was a small school. It was like a family. Now it's an institution. And there's a lot less personal communication with the kids. But what I have seen that I've done in my classes, which most of the kids that leave the school, they say that the thing they most remember of the school of my classes is because I have an enthusiasm. I believe in what I do, and then the result is also has that in it. So kids learn that you can live with an enthusiastic and a positive. And I have seen kids that change, kids that are timid, shy, and suddenly through theater and through filmmaking, they come out. They understand that. I tell them that being ridiculous is you have the license to be stupid and ridiculous in a play, and you can enjoy that. You see. And then also in my stories, there's always a kind of message in them.
Yeah, there's a deeper.
One of the films I did last year is about corruption in politics with the sixth graders, and we have the mayor of the city that is cutting trees without permit and making money out of cutting trees, and that's the movie about. And I'm talking that 12-year-olds are acting the corrupted mayors and all that. And
That's cool.
It is fun. One day I read that all art had to have a message. And I'm not very intellectual when I come to my pottery, and you can be intellectual and have a message when you write or when you do a drama or stuff like that. But when you make a pot, I asked myself, what is the message? Huh? And I realized one day that I make a pot and my message is life is worth living. That you can be happy making something. And it's amazing how my bowls, my plates, they take that to whoever buys them and have them at home. And people come back to me, say, I love your mug. And I've had this plate for 20 years and I love it every time I see it. And I think it's because embedded in the plate is that energy of positive living.
Yeah.
So it was nice because it wasn't an intellectual message. It is a message that is hidden.
Yeah. It's interesting you talked about Zen at the beginning, and I keep thinking of beginner's mind.
Yes.
Of approaching the moment.
Yes.
With naivety, with freshness, beginner's mind, a famous book by Suzuki. Yeah, who did influence me a lot. So
he lived in California, right?
Yeah, for a while. Yeah, but a Japanese lineage. That's amazing. Well, I don't know how long we've been talking. I'm sure it's longer than 30 minutes, though.
Is it? Okay.
But I love it. I love your energy. I could see what the children are referring to, and I really appreciate your openness in this conversation.
Yeah, and I have scripts there that are just waiting to be found.
You know what? Let's go back and figure that out. I'm really grateful for your time today and to share with a different audience, a different perspective. And what would you say to anybody who hasn't been here, who might be curious to come about, the lifestyle in Costa Rica, the lifestyle
What would
here?
I say?
What would you say to some, because you've been to Canada.
Yes.
It's different.
Can you hear the birds? Isn't that beautiful? They're probably listening to them
it.
also, whoever is listening to this.
The birds, the dogs, the traffic. It's alive here. I know.
Okay.
What would you say to somebody who hasn't been here, who's maybe on the edge of saying, oh, maybe Costa Rica, maybe
I would say
Portugal,
if you come to Costa Rica, submerge yourself in the peace, in the honesty, in the harmony. Do not come to Costa Rica if you're not going to be that.
Yeah.
Because that's what makes Costa Rica so valuable. Yeah. And we might be getting people with nasty habits, with corruption, with drug using. And that's not the kind of people that I would like to come to Costa Rica. If you want to Costa Rica, come and live a healthy life, an honest life, a responsible life, a life of spirituality. And I know a lot of people come with that idea, with that intention. And I would say, keep that intention. Yeah. Do not lose it.
That's a beautiful message and a beautiful intention. And I would say it's the nature. As somebody who's always been in love with nature and inspired by being in beautiful natural environments.
I don't know about that because you got nature in Brazil, you got nature in Nicaragua, you got nature in Guatemala, you got nature in Canada. I mean, nature is everywhere.
Yes.
Costa Rica, I mean, if you see it through the Buddhist eyes, it's a karma. It's a karmic place where things have worked. Yeah. Where peace and honesty have become the hallmark of the place. Yeah, the way.
The culture.
Yes.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
So it's not the money.
Thank you, Selva, for doing this. I'm really grateful.
Thank you.
And where do we find you? Where do we follow you? Where did you find
me?
I found you on Instagram. I found you on YouTube.
All right.
So on Instagram, what are people looking for?
Gerardo Selva. Instagram.
Gerardo Selva
and then YouTube, there is a Producciones Cuzuco.
Okay. We'll tag all this.
And Producciones Cuzuco, Gerardo Selva. So you might put Gerardo Selva on YouTube and you'll find it.
Yeah. And if I want to buy your ceramics, I know that we can at the museum in San Jose.
Yes.
And
and there's a gallery in Ubita where they're going to start selling. I don't sell abroad because I don't have the system of properly packing and all these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they have to come here. When they come here, they could come and
They
find
could come
your shop
and visit
here.
me. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for taking time. Really, it was a pleasure.
Thank you
so
very
happy.
much
I'm
for
honored to spend time with you.
helping me to spread my ideas and my work.
It was too short. I know we're cutting it off too short, but you know what? Maybe we do it
Do
again.
a sequel.
Maybe we have you when you come to Canada.
I would love to.
I would
yeah.
love to show you where I am.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I went through Montreal on my way back from India in
Yeah.
Toronto.
Yeah,
But in Toronto, I've been more than once.
yeah. Montreal's a fun city.
Yes, I am sure.
Yeah. Okay, we'll see you soon, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. It's a bit of a twist on the take of Richard Fortin Presents, but I'm so grateful again that you joined me for the ride. Subscribe to the channel, like, share, go find this guy and share the love from Costa Rica. And what can you say? Pura vida?
Pura vida.
Pura vida. Pura vida. Thanks, everyone. Ciao for now. We'll talk to you soon.